Hi everyone. It has been a long time I has uploaded any video on my channel. So today we are going to discuss the most important topic in most of the software companies and software products. Things to consider while accepting the software product. Okay? So let's discuss on this topic and see what are the points we need to consider from a business perspective and from the technical team's perspective. Okay? To accept a software which is coming from a vendor to whom we have given a contract or a third party software. Okay, so let's start then. Well, from business side questions which needs to be addressed. Okay, let's start with the first one. Is the software being purchased has been properly QA tested by vendor? It has been seen that the vendors who actually develop the softwares and sell to the enterprise companies, okay, or enterprise software companies, usually they develop the software in a way that, okay, they won't be having a software testing team. Okay, basically the developers will be doing all the development and testing from their side. And it is not only the software they are developing only for you guys. They will be having a lot of contracts with them to develop the softwares. So it has been seen that there are some vendors they will have their own QA team, okay, and they will do a extensive testing of the software. But there are some vendors they are following a true agile practices, okay, and they believe that a developer who should do all the development and testing by themselves, okay. So that's why it becomes very important when while purchasing or accepting a software product, just verify that there's a proper documentation or sign-offs provided by the vendor's QA team for this particular product. Okay, that's the thing we need to verify from the business side. Is the software being purchased has cleared all UAT criteria from vendor? Okay, so whenever a software has been developed, guys, okay, it will be having some predefined set of requirements, or you can call them the user acceptance criterias. Okay, so if the software comes with these requirements fulfilled in the system, then only the user will accept it. And how that user acceptance goes on? Actually, some beta users, okay, the product will be provided to such users, and those users will test the application and they will cross verify whether the requirements provided by the business has been satisfied by the system or not. Okay, so whenever this kind of UAT testing happens, always this UAT testing will end up with it some documentation and sign-offs. Okay. So as a business, it becomes important for us to check whether the UAT sign-off has been received and user acceptance is confirmed from their side. Okay. The purchasing entity will also perform a UAT acceptance, but it's a best practice that the vendor also follows all these processes from their side. Okay. Well, the third point is the software being purchased has the capability to scale up enterprise requirements? The most important aspect of most of the software products nowadays being developed is they should have that capability to scale up to the enterprise requirements. Okay. So for example, your vendor has provided a product, a software product, okay, say a calculator, for example here, okay. Now, once the software has been handed over to a purchasing company, they will say that we don't just want a standard calculator, but we want this calculator to have the scientific calculation capabilities also. Okay. So this is an additional requirement. So now the question comes, is the developed software from vendor, the calculator software, does it has the capability or flexibility to scale up for this scientific calculator related functionality integration? Okay, so we need to be sure about all these things. It shouldn't happen that it is so confined within the software product that's being developed. It's so confined within itself that it doesn't have the flexibility to scale up for additional or the customer requested requirements. Okay. Fourth point, is the software being purchased really flexible enough to accommodate our organizational requirements? Okay. So here, the software we have purchased, is it really flexible enough to accommodate to our organizational requirements? Organizational requirements in the sense your organization will be having some already existing softwares. Okay. And they want to integrate their existing softwares with the purchased software from the vendor. Okay. Because by doing that, most of the organizations save the cost of again redesigning and developing such applications. So if there is already existing software which can be easily integrated into the purchase software, then some of the additional functionalities they can achieve through their organizational existing softwares. Okay. Now the question comes, is the software that we have purchased really flexible enough to accommodate this kind of integration with those softwares? Okay. So if this thing is satisfied, then trust me, guys, the product which we have purchased is really safe. Okay. And also it has going to save a lot of money that we are going to incur. Okay. So this is the one requirement or question that business needs to ask. And one more thing I would like to highlight here with respect to the point four. Most of the software development companies nowadays using the concept of EAO, Enterprise Architect Office. So basically, they have a lot of software or libraries which are reusable, okay, and they are keeping into them a centralized place. Now, the software that we are purchasing, if it is flexible, if it is easily flexible to integrate with these libraries or existing softwares, that would be a plus point, guys. If that is not there, then definitely you will lose a lot of common functionalities that your organization already providing. Well, let's move on to the fifth point, guys. Okay, so is the software being purchased has the flexibility to implement new changes with fewer modifications? Well, this question, uh, first of all, it tells you if we need to implement a new set of requirements into our software, okay, how fast and with how minimal changes we can achieve that. Okay, basically, with the help of a development team or technical team support, business can verify this particular aspect. Okay, because in most of the software products, it has been seen that in order to implement a smaller to small change, it takes a hell lot of effort to make modification into the existing software. Okay, even for smaller changes. So the product that we are purchasing, it should not be like that, guys. It should be flexible enough, okay, to implement the new changes. Okay, and also it should result in lesser modifications. Okay, in order to implement, for example, you have a software, okay, you have a software and you would like to implement an functionality, a small functionality. Okay, now just to implement that functionality, if you are required to change most of the current working principle of your software, then guys, something is really wrong with the product we are accepting, because later it will make a big problem in your day by day development when your development team starts implementing the new features. Okay, and it will also reduce the time to market. S- okay, usually the time to market should be very faster, guys. Okay, we should implement our changes as fast as possible and give it to the customers. But if these things happen, if you are taking more time to implement even a smaller changes, then your time to market will be increased and again end up in delaying the product release to customers. Okay, so that has been discussed. Well, move on now. Well, the most important thing is the software being purchased has cleared all performance factors in order to be used at enterprise level. Most important point that we are going to consider, guys. Most of the cases, it happens that the business users will attend the first meeting where the vendor will provide a demo of the product they have implemented. Okay, so most of the time the environment that the vendors or the people who give demo using is not having the realistic environment where our production users will be there. Okay, it is like a kind of demo environment, or it's a kind of pre-prod environment where we have less number of users and data is less. Okay, and during the demos it is very obvious that the system performs very well. It is where it can be seen that it is very faster while performing the functionalities in the application. But as a business, it's our responsibility to check is the system meets all the performance factors. Like, in order to submit a form, okay, there should be some threshold. In these many seconds, the form should be submitted and response should be given. Okay, there should be some SLAs, the concept of SLAs for each and every functionalities we perform. And you have to ensure whether the software functionalities are ensuring these SLAs. They are not breaching those SLAs. Okay. So it becomes very important to ascertain the performance document, the performance testing document provided by the vendor. Okay, and one more thing, if there is no such performance testing is done by vendor, so I will strictly recommend you don't accept the software. Pretty clean and clear, my dear friends. Okay, if the product is not tested for performance, trust me, and if you accept such software, later you will end up with fixing all those performance issues. Either you can collaborate with the vendor and you can fix, but again, it will take a significant amount of time to correct the performance related issues, and sometimes it will result in the entire application refactoring, because if the application which is being developed, it has not followed the proper programming standards or service oriented architectures or principles, then guys, trust me, we are required to rewrite once again in order to meet all these performance factors. You would have seen in most of the real time scenarios. One such scenario I would like to give you, the Microsoft's entity framework, okay, object relational mapping software. Okay, from the beginning of its editions, it has provided a rich set of functionalities, but it always lacked in the performance. Okay, now they took a time, they put a lot of effort, okay, and now they worked on the performance in order to make this library or the framework faster. Okay, so being the business users or business people, it becomes our responsibility to check all this documentation related to performance testing. Okay, just go through the documentation, check the SLAs. Are those SLAs meeting your requirements? Because when we give a contract, there are two ways where we accept the software from a vendor. First thing, a vendor has developed the software by his own, by ascertaining the requirements, everything. Okay, so it is completely from his side. They have done the software requirements analysis, they have done the design, they have done the development, they have done the testing. So we are just purchasing because we wanted a solution which fits our business requirements. Okay, this is the first scenario. Okay, and the second scenario comes where we know the requirements and we give those requirements to a third party vendor or a development partner to develop those software. Okay, so in both the cases, what I recommend is please check all the performance testing related documentation and please ensure all these performance related SLAs are meeting your expectations. If not, straight away reject it. Well, let's move on to the seventh point. Is the software being purchased has the overall history of changes in tools like Agile Jira or Azure DevOps, HP Quality Center, etc. Yes, DLC management tools. Okay, now most of the software development nowadays goes through a proper software development lifecycle methodologies. Okay, they can go with the Agile, Waterfall, etc. There are so many processes available. Okay, but the most uh, followed and accepted standard is the Agile Scrum nowadays. So whatever may be the methodology, just to go through their boards, okay, sprint wise, in what particular sprint what they have developed, okay, Was there a proper testing for it? Was there a proper code reviews done for it? And is the QA team has properly tested and given their sign off for that? Okay. So these things we need to check from the business perspective while accepting the third party provided software. Okay. So now let's move on to the technical side of the questions which needs to be addressed. Well, the technical team side questions which needs to be addressed. Well, let's start now. Has the software developed as per the industry standard agile processes? As I explained in the previous slide, okay, there are a lot of software development practices and software development life cycle approaches. Okay, so we need to ensure they are following the industry standard agile process in order to develop these softwares. In agile, there are a lot of methodologies available. Well, it may be Scrum, it may be extreme programming, it may be safe agile, it may be lean. So we must ensure that they are following a standard agile process and the entire team is adhering to that process. Okay, great. Now let's move on to the second point. Has the software has ensured the unit test coverage of above 95 plus percent? Most important aspect while accepting from the technical team side, guys. Okay, the software that they have developed, okay, must have unit tests implemented, or we can call the code coverage. Okay, basically unit testing is a wonderful mechanism which ensures that your system has been developed as per the requirements given by the business analysts or the business people. Okay, now if the software you are accepting doesn't contain a test coverage of at least 90%, okay, don't accept such products. Okay, because what is the problem? I will explain. Okay, the business people will give the requirements. Okay, the business people will give the requirements and development team will start developing that. Okay, now if you don't write unit test, what will happen is, even for a misunderstood requirement also, developer will do the implementation. Okay, developer will do the implementation and he don't have any mechanism to prove that yes, this has been implemented as per our requirements. Okay, so there is no surety whether the development has been made according to the requirement or not. Okay, and one more scenario, what happens is if your business analyst or business people suddenly say that no, this is not the requirement we had requested from you to implement, then you don't have a proof. Okay, you don't have a proof to prove that no, the development has been done as per the requirements, guys. Okay, writing proper unit tests not only help you to ensure your system is stable, but will also help you to identify the issues which are committed during the new developments. Okay, so what we have to ensure is the unit test coverage should be, nowadays it has become a standard of 90 or 95 plus for accepting our software products. Okay, so as a development team, we have to ensure that a proper unit test coverage has been provided for the product. Okay, that's well said. Now move on to the third point. Okay, has the software development has followed any BDD test based development? Okay, there are two types of testing strategies during the development, guys. One is test driven development that I explained in the point 2, that is the unit test coverage. Another is BDD, business or behavior driven development, BDD tests. Okay, so basically a BDD test framework acts as a virtual user to your system. Okay, and these are not like unit tests. Okay, these are not like unit tests which simply mock the dependencies and run the test to ensure the system is each and every change done to the system has been covered. BDD tests are usually provided by the business or functional analysts. Okay, they will provide these kind of tests in terms of tabular format or a table format. Okay, each row represents the scenarios. Okay, each row represents the scenarios or the I can say, yeah, each row represents the scenarios, and whereas the columns, some columns will contain the inputs, and the final column will be the expectation, what should be the output, and all these values will be provided by this business people. So, whenever you do the development, you will simply run your application against these requirements which are provided in a tabular format. Okay, and there are some very famous BDD driven or BDD test development frameworks. Like one such example is fitness that I have seen. Okay, where business people will give their requirements in a tabular format. Okay, each row represents a scenario. There will be multiple columns allocated for input, and final, there will be one or more columns for the output, or usually one column will be meant for output. So we will write some scripts. Developers will write the scripts against their development first. The first thing they are going to do is they will do the development, they will complete their development, and then they will write the scripts against this tabular data provided by the business analyst. They will write the scripts which actually reads the data from that tabular format and runs against your implementation or the change or the user story you have implemented. So what it will do, it will try all the possible inputs, all the scenarios provided by the business analyst. They will use these values, they will pass to your implementation or say to your software product. So your software product will process all those inputs and produces the output. Now, for every combination of input, there will be an output, and if all these input and output combination or the result produced by the system matches with the business analyst provided tabular format, then we will consider that the user story has been implemented as per the requirements. If the system provides the results which doesn't match with the business analyst provided results, then definitely there is something wrong went with our development. We have to identify and fix it. So the overall goal is that we must ensure that the business analyst provided requirements in terms of tabular format should be satisfied, and all those result status should turn into green. That is the okay status. Okay, this is a really interesting framework that I have seen, and what I can say is this is really powerful than the unit testing framework. Okay, but usually we must ensure the product we are going to accept, they should have unit test coverage as well as the BDD test coverage also. But it has been seen that most of the companies who implement unit test coverage, they usually want to go for BDD, but I strongly recommend follow these approaches. Okay, you are not only ensuring the correctness of your system at one level, but you are ensuring from the two level that your system is performing as per the requirements. Okay, so the overall conclusion is that you must ensure that if the vendor has implemented BDD test, then all those tests are green. When these frameworks like fitness, when they run against your system with all requirements, it should result with the OK status. That means all the test suites should go green and all should be executed as per the requirements. Okay. Yeah, that is one wonderful thing about BDD tests, and they act as a virtual user basically. And one more thing I would like to say, that in case of BDD tests, basically we are not mocking the dependencies. There will be possibility of mocking some of the dependencies, but it will be very less, guys. It's like a virtual user testing your system. Okay, so all the integration, everything will be tested in a real-time scenario kind of. Okay, yeah, that has been said. Let's move on to the point 4. Has the software developed with the static code analysis tools like Independent or SonarQube? Most important thing, guys, most important thing. Okay, whenever you start developing a software product, ensure that you are making use of the static code analysis tools. Okay, and what this tool does basically, I think most of the developers will be knowing. If you are doing any kind of mistakes or programming errors, I can say, okay, programming errors, this kind of tools will identify that and they will immediately notify you while building your change. Okay, so if you have configured these tools in your CI/CD pipeline, okay, so these tools will run against the incoming changes, and if they find any kind of code violations, one such example is if else ladder, which is containing say 15 to 20 if else's. This is basically a bad programming practice. So whenever this tool identify this kind of incoming code changes, they will immediately report such errors and they will fail your builds so that you can take some appropriate actions. Same applies for the Sonar Cube also. Okay, so making use of this kind of tools not only makes your code cleaner, but they prevent you from doing any kind of programming errors. Okay, and most of the time writing this kind of bad programming or making this kind of programming errors will result in performance related issues. So making use of this kind of tools, you can avoid those scenarios and make your system stable. So what you have to do as a developer, okay, just ensure that the software you are purchasing have been adhering to any one of such tools. They have, the vendor has used any one such tool to ensure the programming quality of their team or the development quality of their team. And if they are not making use of any such tool, guys, it is better to avoid such product. Okay, it's really better to avoid such product, or you can ask the vendor to run this kind of tools on their code base, and if they find any such errors, ask them to correct it. Okay, it would be good if you're it would be good if you follow this process. And how it helps you, guys, trust me, it will save you for various kind of performance and other kind of issues like system slowness. Okay, or any kind of programming errors, they will prevent this kind of issues. Mhm. And don't worry about the releases. Even if your release is delayed by 1 month or 2 months, please ensure that the vendor implements these tools and corrects if there are any programming errors done by their developers. Okay, so this is also one important point I would like to highlight. Okay, you must ensure as a developer there are some static code analysis tools used by the vendors before accepting such software. Okay, let's move on to the next point. Has the software developed has been gone through the strict code review processes? Well, if you are following a proper unit test coverage, if you are following a BDD test based development, and if you are using the static code analysis tool like Independent Sonar Cube, then code review, it is understood that the vendor has already followed a strict code review processes, because basically these tools and testing frameworks will identify most of the errors the developers have committed. But still, as the code review is the standard process of development, please ensure or check the history of changes done for the product and check, are there a proper code review process has been followed, are there a proper code review comments were given, whether those code review comments are resolved properly by appropriate changes or not. So these things we need to follow and check whether this process is followed properly. Okay, let's move on to the sixth point. Has the software developed strictly followed the programming principles like solid, dry, case principles? Well, this comes mostly from our technical development standpoint. Okay, so one thing I would like to highlight here, this should be our day by day activities, guys. This should be our day by day practice that we have to follow. Okay, uh, whenever we do the development, try to implement the solid principles. You may be knowing single responsibility, open close, list code substitution, interface segregation, dependency inversion. Okay, every developer must follow all these solid programming principles whenever they do their day by day development activities. Okay, so same like there are some other principles like do not repeat yourself, keep it simple and straightforward. So basically these things should be followed. Okay, in the product which we are going to accept from a vendor. Okay, I think for the technical team it's a very easy thing. If they go through some of the code files, they will understand very easily whether the team has followed all these principles or not. Okay. And what are the disadvantages if the product you are accepting is not followed these principles? Guys, trust me, redundancy of code. Okay. In order to achieve the same functionality, they will write a piece of code, and the same piece of code is being used in other file, hell lot of duplication. Ok- okay. And if you don't follow the proper software development principles, then most of the time you will end up with a lot of issues, guys. Okay, you will end up with a lot of issues. So the best recommended practice is following these principles during our day by day developments. And if you find the software product you are accepting, if you go through the source code of this software product, okay, if you find that these principles are not followed, then definitely it's a matter of concern. Okay, it is going to make, if you are going to accept this code base and you are going to start the development on this product, then it will make your life a nightmare. Okay, you have to do a hell lot of refactoring, you have to fix a hell lot of bugs at each and every release of your product. Okay, so in order to avoid that kind of circumstances, please ensure these things are followed, and if not, I would recommend don't accept the product. Okay. Alright, let's move on to the seventh point now. Has the software developer made extensive use of design patterns or reusability of the code? Well, same as the sixth point, but still, what I prefer is the software product or the code base we are going to accept must make use of these design patterns, because design patterns are the solutions to repeatedly occurring problems in our day by day development practices. If vendor has not followed this kind of good programming practices, guys, trust me, it is very difficult to identify the issues which are going to happen in future. Okay, and one more thing I would like to explain here, using brute force algorithms is really dangerous. Don't, you must check this. Okay, you must check this in the incoming source code that you are going to accept. Okay, when there are hell lot of proven standard algorithms or design patterns are available with you, why should they implement something from their side from scratch which is not properly tested, which is not proved that it's very efficient, right? So what I recommend is, please check the source code that you are accepting is making use of good use of design patterns and reusability of code. Okay, 8 point. Has the software developer made extensive use of third-party library to achieve the core functionality of the product? Most important concept, guys. Okay, if the source code that you are going to accept or the product you are going to accept is making use of third-party libraries to achieve the core functionality, then it's a really a matter of concern for you guys. You don't have control over the core functionalities, okay, in order to make changes, because the functionality has been provided by the third-party library and you don't know whether they provide that flexibility to extend it or not, right? So if your business wants a very different kind of requirements or different kind of functionalities they're expecting from the system, then it becomes difficult to accommodate these changes. You can accommodate the changes, but which results in a hell lot of changes you have to do into the product. So it is always a best practice that whenever you implement a software product, the core functionality should be flexible enough. Okay, the core functionality that has been implemented has to be flexible enough to make changes in the future. If that is not there, then definitely, guys, I won't recommend to accept such product. Okay, okay, that is explained. uh, Ninth point, as I have already explained, has the software developer has the performance testing suite in place? Yes, very important thing. Has the vendor who is going to provide us the software, did he done the performance testing for the product? There are a lot of performance testing frameworks like load runner, etc. Okay, so has he made use of such frameworks to test the performance of the system? If performance testing suite is missing, don't accept the software because you don't know what is the performance of this particular software. Okay, This is the must, guys. When you want to deploy this product to production environment, okay, functionalities are the key things. I don't say anything about it, but people or the end users expect, okay, a responsive and faster system, okay. And if they see this particular product that we have accepted is lagging on the production environment, or it is very very slow, then trust me, there is no use of adding additional functionalities or rich set of functionalities to your application, because performance is the key factor. People need speed, okay, they want things to execute in just moments, okay. So we must ensure that. And yeah, I would strictly recommend, if no performance testing suite is there, don't accept the product. As simple as it is. Well, move on to the point 10. Has the sorry, has the software developer making use of multiple architectural patterns to achieve same results? Well, if this is happening into the source code that we are accepting, then it's a matter of concern, guys. Okay. One such example I would like to give you. When Angular framework is giving you a very simple and very effective SPA framework or single page architecture framework, why are you making use of MVC, the ASP.NET Core side MVC, to achieve the same thing or equivalent to achieve the same thing? No, right? When the complete UI responsibility has been provided to a client side library, why server side code is taking care of some of the UI aspects? If this is happening, then definitely it's a matter of concern, and we should not accept these kind of implementations. These kind of implementations not only make the life of developer difficult, but it makes very difficult to integrate new functionalities when it comes from UI side. Okay, so make sure that a framework or the frameworks you are going to use, they are meant for their specific area. For example, MVC is meant for server side. In most of the scenarios, MVC is meant for server side code, whereas MVVM, model view model, or component based architecture is always meant for your client side frameworks. Okay, so ensure that these things should not be mismatched and should not be used on the other part of the code. Well, move on to the 11th point. Has the software developer adhering to service oriented architecture standards? Yes, most important things. And from the architectural side, the architects must ensure that the software source code that we have received has followed the SOA standards. If not, then please don't accept such kind of softwares. Okay, because the product which is not adhering to SOA standards is very difficult to maintain and manage, and also it's difficult to do additional enhancements on such kind of softwares. So I would strictly recommend, if they are not adhering to the service oriented architecture standards, then there is no point in accepting that kind of software source code. Well, let's move on to the next point. Has the software developer consistently upgraded with the new library framework versions? Yes, most important thing. So the vendor would have started the development last year with some of the frameworks, say ASP.NET framework, ASP.NET Core, or standard.NET framework. But after 2 years, these software frameworks have been upgraded with a higher version. Okay, the distribution of these software libraries have provided newer versions with the enhancements, performance fixes, optimizations, all those things. And if vendor has not upgraded to the most recent update of these softwares, then first of all, it is a burden to our team which is going to accept this kind of software, because we have to do everything. We have to upgrade all the libraries, and after upgrading all the libraries after a long time, we will face a hell lot of inconsistencies. Code will break, we have to fix many things. So it's like spending a hell lot of money and developers time, and it is burdening to everyone in the team. So what I recommend is that keep on tracking Okay, whenever keep on tracking whenever the development starts on each sprint from the vendor side, okay, or after some point of time, you ensure that the vendor is making use of most recent upgrade of the frameworks which is provided by their owners. Okay, okay, that is one important point. 13th point, has the software developed really adhering to our organizational security standards? Most important thing, guys. Okay, if you are purchasing a software for which you have not provided any requirements, nothing, you are simply seeing the application functionalities and you are accepting it, then keep this point in your mind. Is it adhering to our organizational security standards? Okay, because what happens is when you accept that kind of softwares and when you run against some of the built-in tools of the organization which simply checks whether the incoming product satisfies all security standards or not, and if it finds such violations, then again it will be a burden for us. Either we have to implement or strictly we have to ask vendor to do that. Okay, and if this kind of security risks are low, say if this kind of security risks identified are very less, say less than 10 number of security issues identified, okay, this can be implemented. But if these kind of security violations are more than 40 or 50, then please or strictly strictly request the vendor to fix all those things before accepting the software. Okay, because if you don't satisfy all these organizational security standards, they won't allow your product to be deployed into your organization's production environment. Okay, in some of the organizations it's a compulsion. If you don't comply with the security standards, they don't allow you to deploy the products on their production environments and they don't make it available to the end users. Okay, that's great. So if these things, as I explained, if the issues are more than 50, then it's better to reject and it's better to request the vendor to satisfy all those requirements. Okay, the 14th point, has the software developer is in a state where it can be easily integrated with our organization's reusable components. Already explained. Most of the organizations nowadays following a concept of enterprise architect office where they will be having the building blocks. Okay, some reusable software components they will manage in a centralized place and they force all the development teams to make use of that. And if the software that we are accepting from the vendor is not flexible enough to integrate with the existing reusable components, then trust me guys, there is no point in accepting such software. Okay, because if you want some new functionality, you have to write everything from scratch just to satisfy your product's requirement, and that development cannot be reusable across other products of your company. Then what is the use of that, right? It doesn't make any sense. So if you find these kind of violations, then please don't accept such software, or ask the vendor to make the necessary changes necessary changes so that the product will be in a state where you can accept it. Okay, definitely it may delay the release time, it may go late by a 3 months 6 months period, but adhering to your own organization standards is always important. Okay, so well, that said, I have explained most of the important concepts and the questions you need to ask when you are accepting a third party software, guys. Hope this session is useful, and let me know if you had any questions regarding any one of these in my channel. Okay, I hope this video will be useful, and I hope this will help you to make the decisions while accepting the third party softwares for your usage. Okay, thank you guys, we'll meet again, and that's it for today.